Hello and welcome. We're about to explore one of the most fascinating puzzles in all of Scripture. It all starts with a divine appointment that every single person has to keep, and the two men in all of history who, at least for a time, seem to be the exceptions to the rule.
Okay, so the bedrock for this entire discussion is found right here in Hebrews. Scripture is crystal clear. It is appointed for man to die once. Now, this isn't just a suggestion. It's a universal law, a divine decree for every single one of us. There are no exceptions, no loopholes. It's just a fundamental part of our human condition as God ordained it.
And right there, that's where the mystery really begins. Because if this appointment with death is truly universal, then what are we supposed to do with the stories of two very specific men in the Old Testament? Two men who were literally taken from this earth without ever tasting death. This incredible anomaly is the very key to unlocking a major future prophecy.
So these two men who stand out in all of history are, of course, Enoch and Elijah. Think about it. In all of recorded time, while every other person has faced or will face death, these two were taken directly by God. It's like their divine appointment was put on hold.
You know, the way they left this world was completely different. For Enoch, the scripture is so simple, so profound. It just says, he was not, for God took him. One moment he was there, the next he just wasn't. But Elijah's exit, wow, that was pure drama, a whirlwind, chariots and horses of fire splitting the sky. So you have two men from two totally different eras with one incredible shared exception.
All right, let's jump forward now from the distant past to the prophetic future, straight to the book of Revelation. Because it's here, in the final days of this age, that we find this incredible prophecy about two powerful witnesses who are going to show up in Jerusalem with a divine mission. And the big question is, who are they?
Scripture gives us this really specific, almost four-act play for these witnesses. First, they're going to prophesy with supernatural authority in Jerusalem for exactly 1,260 days. Second, their ministry is going to be marked by incredible world-altering power. Then, everything shifts. They'll be killed by the beast, that final tyrannical world leader, and their bodies will be left right in the street. But that's not the end. Finally, after 3.5 days, they are miraculously resurrected and called up to heaven for the whole world to see. A very, very specific destiny.
So this brings us to the real detective work, right? Can we figure out who these future witnesses are by looking back at figures from the past? Well, the key is in the specific powers they're given. Let's look at the clues for the first witness, which Scripture lays out with remarkable precision.
Man, the connection here is just unmistakable. Revelation says the witnesses will have power to call down fire and the power to stop the rain. So who in the Old Testament is famous for those exact things? It's Elijah. He's the one who called down fire from heaven on Mount Carmel, and again on the soldiers sent to arrest him. And he's the one who prayed and caused a drought that shut the heavens for years.
Now, here's a detail that a lot of people just read right past, but it is absolutely critical. Elijah's drought, it lasted 3.5 years, and the witness's ministry in Revelation, it lasts for 1,260 days, which is exactly 3.5 years. Come on, that precise parallel isn't a coincidence. It's a divine fingerprint pointing directly to the man himself, Elijah.
Now, a really common theory you'll hear is that the second witness must be Moses. And you can see why, right? Moses and Elijah, the law and the prophets, they even showed up together at the Transfiguration. It seems to fit perfectly. But this idea runs into a massive theological roadblock. So let's just ask the question directly. I mean, the witnesses have the power to turn water to blood, and that sounds a lot like Moses, doesn't it? So why can't he be the second witness? Well, the answer takes us all the way back to that foundational principle we started with.
Okay, here's the problem. Laid out nice and simple. First, Scripture explicitly tells us Moses died. Deuteronomy couldn't be clearer on that. Second, if Moses came back as one of the witnesses, he'd have to die again. And that would mean dying twice, which flies directly in the face of the divine appointment for man to die once. The logic of Scripture itself just doesn't allow for it.
So, if it's not Moses, who is the only other man in history who never died? It has to be Enoch. And when you put them together, Enoch and Elijah, you realize they aren't just two random heroes. They are perfect prophetic bookends representing God's testimony to all of humanity across all the ages.
Look at how beautifully this works. Together they span the entirety of redemptive history. Enoch represents that pre-law era. He was a witness to the world before the judgment of the Great Flood. Elijah represents the era of the law and the prophets. He was a witness to Israel before its judgment and exile. So how perfectly fitting is it that they would both return to testify to the entire world just before the final judgment?
And suddenly the logic becomes beautifully simple. The two witnesses in Revelation are going to be killed. That means they have to be two people who haven't yet fulfilled their appointment with death. The only two people in all of human history who fit that description are Enoch and Elijah. Their return isn't just a possibility, it's a theological necessity.
But this raises a really powerful question, doesn't it? Why must they come back just to die? I mean, why would God preserve them from death for thousands of years, only to have them martyred at the very end? The answer is, their death is actually a core part of their final great testimony to the world.
We really have to reframe how we see their martyrdom. This is not a failure. It's not a victory for the beast. It is the long-delayed fulfillment of that universal decree from Hebrews. Their death is part of the prophetic script, an appointment they were always destined to keep.
You see, their final act sends this powerful three-part message. First, their physical death proves they are real men, not just phantoms or illusions in an age filled with lying wonders. Second, it shows that no one, not even God's most beloved prophets, is exempt from his universal law. And third, and most powerfully, their resurrection becomes the ultimate stamp of approval on their message, proving God's absolute power over both the beast and death itself.
And this has a deeply personal meaning for those who will be living through that time. I mean, think about it. If these two incredible heroes of the faith, who were once taken to heaven without dying, must return to face martyrdom, what a powerful example that is. Their sacrifice is going to be a source of profound encouragement for every believer who is called to pay that same ultimate price.
So we can end with this thought. The story of Enoch and Elijah is this grand, sweeping prophecy, but it's also intensely personal. Their journey proves that while death is an appointment we all have to keep, it's not the end of the story. It's really just a doorway to glory. And that is the promise, authenticated by two of history's greatest witnesses, and it's the very same hope that extends to every single believer today.